What if Avatar Aang gave airbending to the air acolytes? Now, first, there's two things we need to address. So Aang has the power to take away bending. He took away water bending from Yakone so that Yakone couldn't blood bend anymore. Aang also took away fire bending from Fire Lord Ozai, and thus ended the 100-Year War. That's how Avatar Aang won in the end. So Aang has the power to take away bending, and he also has the power to restore bending because he returned Avatar Korra's bending to her. After Korra had her bending taken by Amon, Aang showed up and restored Korra's bending. So Aang can restore and take away, but there's no evidence that he could give bending. But what if he could? What if he could? And what if he gave airbending to the air acolytes? Now, to be clear, the air acolytes, for anyone who might not know, they were first introduced in the comics, but they're also in Legend of Korra. They started out as basically Avatar Aang's fan club, and they were so friendly with they loved Avatar Aang so much that all the Avatar Aang's the fanboys and fangirls dressed up as air nomads and tried to imitate him. And at first, Aang was angry because he thought that they were making fun of his culture and misappropriating the air nomad culture. But then Aang realized that this fan club could become very useful. So Aang decided to transform the fan club into the Air Acolytes. And so the Air Acolytes, they are basically people who follow the ways of the air nomads. So the air acolytes live like air nomads. They live exactly in the same way that the air nomads used to. They wear the same clothes, they follow the same culture, the same customs, eat the same food, they live the same lifestyle. So they live exactly like the air nomads, and they help preserve the air nomad culture and keep it from going extinct, which is very important because the air nomads themselves are extinct. So therefore, these air acolytes are incredibly important. Now, going back to the question of what if Aang gave airbending to these air acolytes? Well, in that case, a lot of problems will be solved. First of all, Aang would give airbending to these acolytes, and they already live in the air nomad culture. They already follow the air nomad customs. They already act like air nomads. So therefore, if they had airbending, they would just be full-on air nomads, and all that would have to happen is that Aang would just need to train these air nomads to do proper airbending, and he could train them in all the proper techniques because Aang was a full-fledged airbending master, and he could do that, and the air nation would just be repopulated. All the 4 air temples would be filled, Air Temple Island would be filled, and the air nation would be back, and Aang would be so happy and feeling so fulfilled, and also Aang would be ecstatic, as I said, and it's possible that he might, while he would still love Tenzin, he probably wouldn't make Tenzin the favorite kid, in that the reason Tenzin was the favorite kid is because Aang viewed Tenzin as the only way to fully preserve the Air Nation, because Tenzin was the only airbender other than him, because Tenzin is the only kid of Aang who is an airbender, so Aang focused all his attention on Tenzin. But if Aang has all these air acolytes who have airbending now, because he gave them airbending, then that makes it so that he doesn't have to focus so much on Tenzin, and therefore he can give his other kids, Kaya and Bumi, more attention, and he can rest assured that the air nomad culture will live on, and Tenzin will probably be less serious and less, uptight, because he knows that the new air nomads, air acolytes, can preserve the air nomad culture and the bending styles as well. So he would probably still be their leader in a sense, but I'm sure there will be new monks and nuns from among the air acolytes. So yes, the Air Nation would just be repopulated, Air Nation would be reborn, Air Nomads would be perfectly fine and restored, so everything would be fine. And then Aang would end up dying, but the 4 air temples would be back, and the Air Nation would be completely restored. And then, of course, Korra would be born, and the Red Lotus would still try to kidnap Korra. However, they would fail, because Sokka, Zuko, Fire Lord Zuko, Chief Sokka, and Tonraq and Tenzin would stop the Red Lotus from kidnapping Korra, and then Korra would still be raised in seclusion in the South Pole, and then Book 1 would happen. And in Book 1, I guess the main different thing is Korra wouldn't necessarily have to train with Tenzin. She wouldn't necessarily have to go to the Air Temple Island. She could go to any of the 4 air temples because they would be filled with air nomads now. And so there's that. So she might not even end up going to Republic City, which means Amon might just take over Republic City. And maybe Tenzin and his family might lose their bending, but then there would be other air nomads out there, so maybe that. Or another thing that I should have thought of is, if the air temples are still out there, like if the air temples are filled with airbenders, well, it's possible that Korra would end up going to the air temples to train rather than just staying in the South Pole the whole time. So who knows? So that's how book 1 could change. And book 2, and so maybe Korra wouldn't be as close to Tenzin. I'm sure they'd still be friends and hang out a lot, but maybe she just wouldn't be as close to Tenzin because of the fact that there are other airbenders. And of course, in book 2, I mean, Unalaq would still do his thing, and let's say book 2 just turns out similarly or so. Oh, and in book 2, I think they would have an easier time with the spirits because the air acolytes, air nomads, would be very attuned to the spirit world, and maybe a lot of them would just know how to spiritually get in and out, and so maybe they'd just be better with the spirit world, so maybe they could help Korra in a way that Tenzin couldn't. And so, of course, I think Jinora would still be helping Korra, but I think Korra could be helped by the new air nomad, so maybe she would have an easier time, and maybe she would close the portal so that Batu just can't get out, and Unalaq is basically screwed. And in book 3, I think the new airbenders would have still arisen because I think the people in book 3 who got airbending, who received airbending, I think that they would have still received airbending even if the air acolytes did already have airbending. So basically there would just be a surplus of airbenders. So you have all the air acolytes who already can airbend because Aang gave them airbending, and then you have the new airbenders who were given airbending by the harmonic convergence. So you have a surplus of airbenders, which would make the air nomads very happy. And that would probably make it so that Zahir, and of course Zahir would still get airbending, and Bumi would too, but it would probably make it so that Zahir and his friends, Red Lotus, would have to try some different methods to get Korra to come to them and surrender to them, because obviously they were able to capture all the air nomads in book 3, but if the air acolytes also had airbending, there would just be too many air nomads to kidnap, and they wouldn't all be in one place. They would be all over the place. They would be at all the 4 air temples and elsewhere, so it would be hard to use that as leverage. So they would have to probably find different leverage, and then and then in book 4, I think that things would turn out pretty similarly. I think things would just turn out pretty similarly, and not much would change. The air nomads would still be filling the gap that Korra made after she went into recovery. So I think overall it would just make Aang a lot happier. The air nomads would have been restored a lot sooner, and it would be a net positive for the Air Nation. And it would put less pressure on Tenzin. So I think overall Aang being able to give airbending to people would have been wonderful. And of course, if he could give other bending to other people, that would be great too.